Make sure you look at the camera though.
Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome to another Monday Win by Noon webinar. I am Todd Bookspan and I'm joined by my co-host, Miss Plug and Play SM, Deborah Bird. What's up, Deborah?
Yes, happy Monday. I'm excited to see your new setup. It looks good.
Well, it's really hard because you're down here,
Yeah.
and I'm looking up here on my new camera that we're testing out that Ryan Graham's with Call Upgrade set up for me. And mine is a mobile camera setup. So where most people have like a permanent thing that they set up. But since I work at home sometimes, I work in my real office sometimes, I work at Kevin Kaufman's office sometimes, I had a mobile setup, which I'll make permanent like little things. But for today, we're playing around. So apparently you can hear me, apparently you can see me. And
yeah, it looks great.
And hopefully I won't look down at you. I'll look up here.
Yeah, that's the only hard part.
Exactly. I think
Were you using a webcam before, just so people can kind of get an understanding of the difference? Because the quality looks really good. Maybe because you also don't have the virtual background.
Right. So I got my real background. And so before I was using the webcam off of my computer. And what happened is I'm getting ready to launch my podcast. I've got 5 or 6 episodes already recorded. And the guy who I did my intro, he's like, your intro doesn't sound good and it doesn't look good. I was like, oh, that's not good. And so I figured I should invest in a setup. Now, the irony is that I own pretty much almost all the equipment that I just paid Ryan to get, but mine comes in this fancy, where'd it go? Oh, sorry, I don't hear under my desk, but mine is the first one that comes in this fancy travel case that's all decked out.
Wow.
So I will be bringing that with me to Las Vegas. And Adam was like, should I bring all of our other equipment just in case? I'm like, I don't know how you're going to carry it all, but now I've got this fancy case with my equipment, thanks to Ryan Graham's. And then I'll get some lighting for behind me now. I'll probably do some cool lighting, but really what it is that most people are closer to the camera and further from the background. My desk is still sitting back right next to this thing. So it'll all happen, but so that's what we were talking about. That's why we were 1 minute late to start the call, but Deborah and I were all catching up.
But do you know how many people ask me about lighting setup and camera setup whenever they are doing videos? That's why I thought it would be at least a little bit of value to start with, because people have that question. I get it every week.
Yeah, and I'm not even using the cool lighting that he has, but it's kind of this cool square light thing that he's got that I can set up too. But I got my little umbrellas over here. I normally have a light ring, but I took the light ring down so I could shine the camera through here. But we'll make it better. We're just trying to get better for all of you because Deborah's upgraded her setup, and so now I've got to upgrade mine.
Can I tell you, this is the same setup. I just painted the walls and moved to the corner. It's a different room, I suppose, but it's my same. I have a Canon camera with my Shure microphone, and I really like, what is the name? Oh, Lume Cube. They have wireless soft boxes almost, but they're a little bit smaller. So they're easy to be mobile and you don't have all the cords that you're bringing around. So if you are looking for good lighting without a whole bunch of cords, check out Lume Cube.
And you paint your wall black, or is it dark blue? What color?
No, it's the Sherwin-Williams paint color of the year. It's probably like an elephant gray. But I don't have my overhead light on because I don't really like this.
The paint color of the year. Look at all the things you all learned by watching Deborah and I. Have your house.
Well, it's so hard. Yes, you know how hard it is to pick out paint colors and tile, and we've painted almost the entire house. Now we're looking at changing out granite, and it was either sell the house or fall in love with the home.
Love it or list it, right? I've seen that show on HTV. All right, so the last thing I'll comment is he said I'm supposed to be rock, paper, scissors. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I'm not quite there. I'd have to look down for a minute, but you're supposed to have paper above your head. I think I'm good there. And then you're supposed to have a rock below your chin. So I'm close there. And then you're supposed to have like the Richard Nixon double. So I'm pretty close, but I should be closer because this is a little too wide.
No, I think it looks good. Yeah, maybe a little bit further. I should have turned my lens. We used my camera on Friday for our mortgage coach call at Denise's office. We tried to do a different setup than usual. So I did not go back in and correct my lens.
That's all good. That's all good. So I set us up today to talk about a couple of things. Really, the number one thing was, we've had such positive feedback from our interview with Bill Hart last week, right? I mean, how good was that? It was
so good.
Right. So normally we keep these calls to 30 minutes and we went the full hour with Coach Bill. I said, how long do you have? He said, I got till the top of the hour. And so I took it, and you were all nice enough to stay along with us for that full ride. So that was fabulous. And so I think anytime you have a conversation like that, we have to make it actionable, right? Like we have to talk about our takeaways, because a lot of you watched it And if you watched it, great. Then I want to hear from you too. But think about the things that we talked about and how maybe you could take action on those as a result of Deborah and I talking about today. And then there's also those of you who missed it. And so I think there's a lot to glean from that, because we're going to give you the cliff notes of what that is in about 23 minutes. So you'll be able to get the faster version of that. And so I never want to steal the thunder. So why don't you start with your first takeaway, Deborah?
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about something else. So now I got to
All
go
right.
back to my notes.
Well, what do you want
So
to talk
you go
about?
first.
Well, we're going to talk about this, and then we can talk about something else. This is the
Okay.
other part that Deborah and I never really plan what we're going to talk about, always together. Sometimes one of us picks it and then we just run with it.
I thought it was the saying no.
Oh, the saying no thing? Oh, I did send you that too. That's pretty dang good. No, we'll talk about that next week.
Okay.
Let's make that our next week's topic.
Okay, got it.
I'm presenting in Mastermind in Vegas on Thursday, and it's funny because I probably could do the whole hour just on that piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I just saw that this morning, and I don't want to spoil it for everyone, but I just saw the picture I sent you this morning. So I'm going to add it to my slide deck. Even though my slide deck was due last Friday, I'm going to tinker with it today and add that in there.
Okay, so one of the biggest takeaways, or at least something that I have a star on, because I'm looking at my Monday notes section in my planner. So this is where I go back and refer to all of our calls, was to start with what you want. And I feel like that's where I know it sounds simple, but sometimes it can be really difficult. And I'm going to go ahead and sound sexist here, where I'm going to say for women especially. And again, this doesn't apply to all women and not men. But I think just from talking to so many females in the industry, it can be hard sometimes to get really clear on what you want, or creating and even writing down goals, because we're taught for so many years. And if you're a mom, you have kids and you're constantly looking out for them. And if you're a wife and you're a helper for your husband, then it's so hard for us to focus on ourselves. Where I remember one of the branches that I worked in, the branch manager had asked for everybody to write their goals in. They were due by July, because it was kind of a recap from the beginning of the year. And it was a very kind of nasty email of saying, for those who were late on submitting their goals, like they won't allow people who play small or who live in fear, and that would be the only reason why you wouldn't write your goals out, is because you're too scared, to own to what you really want. But anyways, long story short, I thought, there's some people here, who've either never been truly asked what they want, or they don't know because they haven't been, like I had asked you, Todd, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe months ago, about traveling. I really wanted to take my kids somewhere, and I haven't really been a whole lot of places. So I don't know what would be good with kids with different age levels. And yes, I did Google, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so I circled in, get really clear on what you want, because I feel like even I still struggle with that at times. And I'm looking at every area of life of, how to not just focus on business, which is kind of my crutch. So, so that was my homework assignment, was looking 90 days out. And even though, we're about a little bit longer than that from now until, or maybe we're right at 90 days now, actually, was how to get more intentional. This is kind of an off season. So even with what I do, it's either we have clients who have they're putting some things on pause, or maybe they're doubling down, or it gives us a chance to really tighten up in what we do business wise, but also just with family, making sure that I'm reaching out to my mom enough, and to my dad, and being a good sister, and, not letting those personal relationships slip through the crack. That was a very long answer.
No, that's good. That's the kind of answer we need. If we had just do short answers, we're going to run out of time. We won't run out of things to say. I think that's really important, especially I think the personal part of it. I do think that most of us fall back on our business as a crutch. I think that when I was, I don't want to say that I'm not young and hungry anymore, but before I was 50 something and, established, I always felt like it was my responsibility to work really hard. And if you heard the story, Bill Hart was my coach for 4 years. So I got in the business at the very end of 2001. So right after 9/11, I got in the business, and I hired Bill as my coach about a little over a year later. And, I was just so fortunate to have a coach that early, and to have it be Bill Hart, and he's, he always jokes about it. He didn't say it on the call. I was actually sort of surprised. He normally jokes that he owes me a refund because of the fact that he only had a couple of clients. It was literally his first year of coaching, but it wasn't that. It was just having that impact and that influence a person. I always say he made me a better human, better husband, a better father, a better friend, because he forced me to look at those things. However, I still find that that's a habit I fall into when I get into that zone. You know, I'm working on a project for Win by Noon, or, you know, I'm working on my, you know, yesterday, right? Family Day, Sunday, I worked for, 4 hours on prepping for my speech this week. And so that does happen. And, you have those times. And so what I always say is when you have, one is do what Deborah said, right? Think of those connections that you want to make. And it kind of brings me, and then two, I would say is just make sure that when you're going to do that, you ask for permission. So for me, I asked for permission. My wife had some stuff she wanted to do around the house. My daughter was doing homework. And so I just said, hey, are you guys okay if I take this time? I need this many hours. When's best for me to do it? And so I didn't impact any expectations that they had for me. So that's always a kind of a good thing. My highlight was when I looked in my planner, which is full of notes as well.
Real quick, Todd, do you think it's harder for, just from your experience with coaching people, do you think it's hard for women to stop and think of themselves?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because we are such nurturers and caretakers that if you ask us what our goals are, it's like, we're here to help everybody else with their goals,
I think
Do
the
you see
challenge,
that?
what I found when I was coaching, because I coached some top producing women, right? I mean, women that you would know who been on a lot of interviews and whatnot. And they were also in mastermind groups alongside of me. And I think that the difference is I felt like I was a pretty involved father. I was a stay-at-home dad for 2 years before I got in the mortgage business. I was getting my MBA at night, and I was a stay-at-home dad. But when I was a stay-at-home dad, my wife said that she needed to actually still to have a housewife at home to do the work. She makes it sound like we made lots of messes. I don't know that we did make lots of messes. I feel like we weren't as messy as she thinks we were, or maybe I was just had my blinders on. I'm not sure which one. But I think that when it comes to women, you have a different sense of responsibility around the kids. And oftentimes your spouses aren't as good at supporting you as you need if you're the focused in business at a similar level, or oftentimes I found that they were the big breadwinners in the family, but they weren't getting that support from that they needed. And so I don't know if that's coming across correctly, but it's definitely, I felt like I was a very involved father, but I still needed someone with the outside lens to come across and smack me in the side of the head and say, okay, well, yeah, but are you being a great husband? Yeah, are you still being a good friend? But I feel like, I guess look at yourselves. If you're a guy listening to this call and you've got younger kids, how responsible, or how are you responsible for helping? Are you cooking? Are you cleaning? Are you picking up the kids? Again, I've got, for a while there, my wife was a stay-at-home mom. And so my responsibilities changed during that time because I didn't need to be the one who picked the kids up from school. I still drove them to school. That was always just one of my things, that I love doing. I timed showing up at the office to when, after I dropped my kids at school. And I think that we all have to sort of see what that's like. And what I've become better at in my 40s and 50s was I became a better communicator with my wife on what were her expectations. Because I just typically, probably in my early 30s, when I got in the mortgage business, I think I went with what I thought was the right thing to do, which was to make money for the family. And I didn't say, hey, are there other things that I can do to be a better husband or a better father? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it makes me feel better. Anyways,
Yeah.
that was my biggest star, is just, and I know we always think we do this with starting with what you want, but it's still a battle for me to, really get clear on that and not feel guilty almost and selfish for thinking so much of yourself. And I understand the whole, you can't pour from an empty cup, and the, flight attendant example of the oxygen mask, you have to put it on yourself first. So I get all of that. I can just hear it in some of the clients that I work with, with developing their personal brand of, it's okay to stop and pause and even take moments where maybe your walks in the morning or your workouts like that. That's usually my only me time, is I get to go to the gym. Of course, now my daughter's old enough. She's been following me and she's grounded from her devices. So it's almost like I'm grounded and punished
Oh
because she
no.
just wants to talk. And I'm like, she's like, you're not going to listen to one of those podcasts, are you? I'm like, yes, that's what I do when I work out. It's what I enjoy. So that's what I'm listening to. And she's like, ugh. So anyways, okay. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I
No,
did. So
that's all
go
right.
ahead.
That's all right. So my number one takeaway was the reminder. I wrote it down here, is in my terms, like what are my terms? And so one of the things that, Bill talked about was really identifying, what are your terms? How do you want to do things? And kind of blends into what you just said. And so for me, it was really thinking about that. And I thought about it a little bit during the week. I didn't think about it as much as I would like. And, I've got to schedule some thinking time to, sort of dig into what I want that, what I want that to look like. Because again, it's just, it was just fun because that was part of what Bill had to, Bill and I had, we had kind of a couple phases of our relationship, right? 4 years one-on-one as my coach. Then I got into a program called Master's Coach, and that had, you had to get a different coach at the time when you went into Master's Coach. And then eventually they brought in other coaches to Master's Coach. And so eventually Bill came back into the picture of Master's Coach and actually ran Master's Coach. And then there was multiple coaches doing that. So for a bit, Bill was again my coach, but more outside. I had a different coach within the group, but I got together with Bill once a quarter, and he poured into us as a small group. It was a group anywhere, probably average around 30-ish, 35, maybe as low as 28, as high as 44 one year. And then I transitioned to being a coach alongside of Bill in the group. And it was kind of one of these sad things where I actually thought when I became a coach, I was no longer going to be part of this group, which had been part of my soul for a decade. And then he said, oh, we got to do a Zoom call to announce it to everyone that, you're changed. And he's like, so the next time you see Todd, you'll see him at the front of the room, not the back of the room. And I was like blinding flash the obvious that I was still going to coach, in the group. And it was really, a surreal transition. And so then I coached with them alongside of them as compadres. I don't know what you call us as, I don't know what the right word is. There's some word there that, but we basically coached arm in arm in that program together with, which had some phenomenal folks in it. And so that's really where the mutual respect comes from. So when Bill's saying, Todd, I don't know if this was what I was coaching at the time, it's when I hear that, certainly he was in Master's Coach time, but I wasn't a one-on-one client of his. And so when he's talking about, on my terms, I'm like, oh, that's just a good thing. And it's, I'm definitely introspective today. Primarily, I just had a friend of mine texted me that a guy that I met who's a CEO in our space, not of a mortgage company, but of a mortgage tech company, that he was in the pool with his wife last week, over the weekend. He went inside to change and came out and she had passed away in the pool. Like super sad. Like, so again, when I'm talking today, like in the back of my head, that's rolling, like, time is finite for us here. And so now I'm totally off because I brought up that story.
Do they know why? Do they know did she fall?
I didn't hear that
or?
yet. I don't know what happened.
Wow.
I'm guessing she had maybe a heart attack or something. I'm not quite sure.
But that's so true, because the way we spend our time or invest our time we act like we have plenty of it, when reality is we don't, and we don't know when the last day is. So I mean, that still haunts me. In fact, I get those Facebook memories up on my wall where this is about the time when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and I was in and out of different ERs and found out it was viral meningitis and then later occipital neuralgia. And so when you see those stories pop up, it's like, it's a good reminder of how much you take for granted. And I even said this after the hospital I had such pounding headaches and I tried to fake it as long as I could. I think Denise even did a mortgage coach call for me, kind of stepping in as me, because it was brutal. And so your health and just your time, and it is precious, and being intentional. That was one of the things I wrote down too, is, when your shoulds become must. And part of that is when you get really clear. So Bill had said you can't motivate people, but you can help them create their landmarks. So when you peel back the layers of the onion and you get really clear as to what people want and why they want it, then it's easier to turn I should do this, I should make 20 calls, the moment you can turn them into must. Like for me, it was like drinking more water and maybe throwing in some fruits and vegetables every once in a while. It becomes a must once you reach a certain point where you've neglected it for too long. And fortunately, sometimes that's the motivator itself, is you have no other option. It's a must at that point.
Well, I think that's the key. It's funny because you've seen it before on my planner every day. It says BWC for Be World Class, which I got from Jonathan Roach at the Positive Impact Summit. And then the other thing that I probably had in there for, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks, it says every day's a gift. And it came from, it's going to sound really corny. Don't judge me, but it came on a weekend, when I got home from a run. My daughter was watching some HGTV show and they're fixing up some house, and I didn't know who these people are, but one of the guys' brothers is the does some of the work for him, and he's got an eye patch. And the guy who they were doing the house for, he also had an eye patch. So I don't know how, I can't remember the story of how he lost his eye, but the other guy said it was some type of accident that almost took his life, the carpenter guy, and that every day is a gift. And the way he just said it, and the way that he talked about his relationship with the other guy who only had one eye, just struck a nerve with me. And so those have been the two things. And then the other primary one that's been in there is look in the mirror, which is just, hey, are you practicing what you preach? Right. I mean, obviously I get up here, I've got the gift and opportunity to talk to a lot of you every week in and week out. And so it's just that reminder to myself that if I'm getting up here and telling you that you should do something, then guess what? I better be doing it. I better be doing it too. And, I'm always transparent because, certainly far from perfect. Like my meditation practice kind of stinks. And my wife this morning was watching, there's a Lakers documentary. There's two of them right now. There's one that's like the Hollywood version of it with, following the players, and the other version of it's following Jerry Buss and his family. And we're just to the point where Phil Jackson took over the team, and they were talking about how Kobe and Shaq were on two different places. Like they just weren't in the same place. And they were down by 15 points in the fourth quarter, in a game. And, basically, Phil Jackson brought in meditation to the group and go into your quiet place. And so they were expecting some, kind of genius from them when they were down in the fourth quarter by that much. And he just said, oh, go to your quiet places, everyone. And they're all expecting him like, here's your play, throw it into Kobe, throw it to Shaq. He's like, we'll get to your quiet place. And then Kobe looked at Shaq, said, I got your back. And Shaq said, I got yours. And then all of a sudden, Kobe's got a free shot, but instead he alley-oops to Shaq, he scores it, and they come back and win the game. And it's like, all right, that's my reminder about my meditation practice. But was surprising to me. I never knew that, Phil Jackson's having them do that. I know they called him the Zen master, but totally off tangent, but that's where, where I go with it. So it's kind of, as we talk through this, these things, Bill always does such a masterful job of bringing it back to action. And so one of the other things that he said, which is something I've long believed most loan officers fail to do, or people in general in sales, is he said you have to have 3 to 5 things that you execute day in and day out, right? And so the other part of it is that, when you're looking at yourself, what are the top things? So the reason that Win by Noon has your top 3 things in your planner, that's really supposed to be the top 3 things that you should be doing in your role, not necessarily today, right? So if I was saying what were my top 3 things for today, it would have said, learn how to use this fancy new camera. It would have said, run through my mastermind speech a couple of times. And it would have said this webinar, be ready and be dialed for the webinar, because those are my top 3 things for the day. They go on my to-do list. They don't go into my top 3 things, which is be world-class. Every day's a gift right now. And then today I didn't put look in the mirror. I put mastermind, because again, this event, I'm showing up, people are paying to be there, and I better kick some ass with my presentation.
I have no doubt that you will. I'd love to see it beforehand. I wish I could be there. And I don't know if anyone on the call right now will be there. If you are, make sure you guys take pictures of Todd when he's speaking, please. So then we can incorporate that in social. That would be awesome. I'm curious if any, yeah, well, it always helps when you have live footage. I'm also curious if anyone on here, and I know this may be, you could be watching after this is live, but what were some of your biggest takeaways, if you're willing to share, from Bill's webinar last week? I had a lot of people send text messages or DMs or just how powerful it was. And, I can't believe I haven't listened to it again, maybe because my daughter's been working out with me and I don't get to listen to as many. But I'd love to hear from you guys. So y'all drop that in the comments and let us know what your biggest takeaways were. I do have on here that he said, I'm trying to remember where this was going, but he said there's 2 different types of loan officers, the ones that are fearful and the ones that are fat and happy. Do you remember what his?
Yeah, what that actually was something that I said.
Okay.
And it was my takeaway. So one of the things I've been really fortunate for when I'm preparing for this this topic at Mastermind, right, is I know a lot of you. So I've got my small group coaching group. So I asked them, hey, what's really important to you? Of course, I talked to Dave Savage and I said, hey, Dave, what are you thinking? Now, ironically, Dave is speaking after me now. So therefore, I have to now take a couple of examples that I knew I was going to use that I'm now going to give back to Dave. He doesn't know it, but I just know he's going to use these examples. And so I'm going to let him use them instead. And I'm using different examples from my own stuff that I'll use. You, Deborah, obviously have been a big influence on it. Josh Metal, and I spent time just because he and I chat a lot, and he's speaking before me. And so that came from Josh Metal. And it's really kind of where I came up with the idea of recession-proof your business. Because Josh said, he said, the question for a loan officer is, do you have the discipline to succeed if rates go to 7%? And then I told him, I said, you know what, I got to be really careful, because he wanted me to talk about rates going to 7%. I said, well, wait a second, but the day before me is going to be Barry Habib is opening up. And I'm sure that Barry Habib is going to say that rates are going to get lower next year. So I don't want to say that rates are going to 7 when Barry says the rates are going to 4.5. And so really what my thing is, do you have the discipline and the skills and the plan for if rates go to 7? And then are you also ready if they drop to 4%? I think you have to be ready for both of those, because they're gonna potentially go higher before they go lower. And so the two types of loan officers actually came from my conversation with Josh. He felt like there was loan officers who are all in fear mode right now, and those are the loan officers that are spinning, trying to figure out what to do. And then I would just say, do what we talked about with Bill, execute on 3 to 5 things. And then he said the other group were the group that are sitting fat and happy. He said they're sitting with 6 figures or more in the bank, and they're okay that they're not busy right now, and they're just going to sit around and wait for rates to drop. And that's a problem, because you should be working on your business, right? We had calls months ago where we talked about you got to be harvesting, during this time. And so I think that, those are 2 sets of loan officers right now. There's probably the set that's in the middle. They've got money, but they're in fear, and they're not knowing what action to take. And I guess probably the other people are the people that are taking the right action. I mean, I got an email from someone who was in my first coaching group earlier this year, brand spanking new loan officer, right? So brand new, had never done a loan before. And she did the first, all in, right? All in on the first 12-week session. And I let people who did the first 12-week session come into the second 12-week session for free. And then I'm letting those people now come in for half price to the new one. So if you're one of those folks and you missed the message, jump into the new one. But what happened was the free people didn't actually show up the whole time. That's why I don't, you don't have skin in the game. You don't tend to do stuff. But what she said was I started to get busy. So then she closed 1 loan and then 1 month, and then she closed 1 loan the next month, and then she closed 1 loan the next month, and then 1 loan the next month, and then August, 4 loans, right? September, she did 3 loans. And I'm like, that's a person, she said she's doing the things that she learned. She knows what are those things she's got to do every day. And so, that's, I think, the last thing I'll say. I was very nice of Bill to talk and encourage people to take a look at the operating system group coaching I'm doing. But the interesting thing to me is the number of emails I've gotten from people that if you ask me, how many loans is this person doing? I'm saying they're doing, 8 to 10 loans a month right now. And then they're sending me messages saying, you know what, Todd, I'm actually doing 1 to 2 loans a month right now. Do you think that your program would be good for me? And the answer is a definite maybe. If you're just not sure, reach out to me. I'm happy to, give you some insight to it. But there's a 30-minute Q&A on the website, just WBNoperating-system.com, stands for Win by Noon operating system, right? You need a new operating system in here. And I think probably anyone can use it who's not doing 5 loans a month consistently. But all right, I'll stop my sales pitch. Go, Deborah.
Is it just for loan officers or real estate agents too?
It is just for loan officers
Okay.
because I don't know enough about, I'd love to do a realtor version of it, but I would probably team up with a realtor to do it. I think I could pull one off, but this one is just for LOs, because I'm really going to walk through my systems, right? From lead to annual mortgage review to scripting. But the biggest thing with it's going to be is action plan every week to be what to put together to be putting out to your database and to your realtors each week to build referral relationships. Because I feel like I did that just kind of off cuff like I do on this call. Someone asked me a question. I said, well, here's what I would do. And then of course, that means I had to do it. And so I did it, and I led by example. And then I shared with what I did. And the people who actually took what I gave them and did their own version of it, guess what? They all connected with more people. So a perfect example of that. So let me say one of the things I love from Bill. Bill said, And it's funny because I just wrote it down because I realized I'm going to add it into my conversation at Mastermind. He said, tell me a little about your real estate situation, right? So I love that. And I'm going to use that for database, right? Because I feel like if you're going to be ready for 4% rates, you need to have your database ready. And the way you're going to have your database ready is it's got to be loaded in a CRM, and you have to actually have a communication plan to talk to them. I interviewed Bliss Sawyer. So Bliss, some of you have seen her. She used to be on a lot in the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind group, and she's kind of been doing her own thing, heads down, traveling around, spends a month or two at a time on her bike riding around somewhere around the country. And she said that in 2019, because on Mortgage Coach, I totally had forgotten about it. But in 2019, we had a contest of who could make the most calls during a month. And so she kicked ass, she did that. And so she said that was basically what helped her have the best 2020, more so than she would have thought, because she said she didn't have time to make any proactive calls, right? We all knew that. We were running, as Bill said, the cash machine was going and we were all grabbing $100 bills. And she's like, yeah, I couldn't proactively call anyone, but she, because we had forced her to do it, because she's competitive and wanted to win the competition, she had made phone calls to her database with the help of her team and connected with her clients. So guess what? When rates dropped and their servicers were calling them and Quicken was sending out stuff to them and all these other things, guess who got the lion's share of her loans was her. And so that's going to be the question that I'd be calling my database and saying, tell me a little about your real estate situation. And I think you could also use that in a conversation with a real estate agent. Hey, tell me a little bit about your current practice. I don't know if I'd say situation. That'd be a weird one. Maybe Deborah has a better spin on it.
Well, my mind immediately went to, when you're calling your database, I would have thought the lead would have been, your financial situation or, your debts. But I could see where when you start with real estate, that's a lot softer and easier conversation to then maybe break through the ice where people would trust you again to maybe expose. We've put a lot on credit cards, or our credit score has dropped, or we're struggling a little bit, or worried about job, whatever. So when I first heard that, I thought, I wonder why you go after real estate instead of to the root of, if you're a debt manager or asset, advisor. But I like that. I like that it's the real estate
All right, so
situation.
we've gone over time, but we'll go for another 6 minutes or so if you got time, Deborah, to like 1:40, unless we're just on a roll. But it kind of gave me a couple of other things maybe to consider with your database. My team has been getting lots of calls for people who want home equity lines of credit, and most of your companies, where my team is, there's no profit. I think they can make $500 on a HELOC, and you got to charge a processing fee, so it's way more expensive than going somewhere else to get a HELOC. And so number one is I've been coaching my team to just ask the question that we've talked about in this situation, what you were just talking about, Deborah. Hey, tell me about your debt outside of your mortgage, right? So, first question is, awesome, what are you going to use it for, right? Typically they say home improvements. Awesome. Well, tell me about the debt outside of your mortgage. And then it's interesting because the majority of them actually have debt outside of their mortgage too. How long do you think you're going to have the debt for? Again, you guys all know it. The Fed keeps raising rates. HELOC rates are really expensive right now. And so therefore you got to look at the balance between their 3% first mortgage and this new 8% second mortgage as the second mortgage gets bigger. And one of the things that Jeremy Forcier said 3-4 months ago was that he was actually showing his clients that they should pull the Band-Aid off. This is when rates weren't as high as they are now. Pull the Band-Aid off and then do the cash out refi now, so that when rates drop next year, we're not combining your first and second mortgage and having it be deemed cash out, that you'll actually get a lower rate when you do that. So that was kind of one thing that was interesting. So one is ask the questions. Two is, if it's going to be big enough, then look at combining it so that when rates drop again, instead of you combining those two loans into one, then you are doing a rate and term refinance then. And so we all know that, use the TCA for debt consolidation. So that would be that. But the other one that I thought was super interesting was, there's a gentleman out in San Diego. His name is Steve Hogard. And if you've ever met Steve, Steve, he's just one of these, I call him a gentle soul. Shockingly, he just turned 60. He looks like he's about 40. He surfs every stinking day. His office is across from the beach. Just a super good human. And he drives a VW thing to the beach sometimes, which was my first car. So I got that kinship with him. And he plays the ukulele. And so there's all sorts of things I love about Steve. And I saw this thing that his daughter posted up on social media, because Deborah will talk about this as the connector, is that I hadn't talked to him in like 3 years. And it was, we played phone tag, a couple of times, but His daughter posted up that she was her first day of 14th grade. So I kind of laughed and just said, hey, buddy, I just want to catch up, see how you're doing. And so again, he gave me a paradigm shift about this HELOC thing. And what he said is that he told his clients, yeah, you know what, it's way cheaper. Here's the bank to go to get one on your own. But he had a client who said, well, yeah, but I don't want to deal with them. I just want to deal with you. And he said, well, it's going to cost like $2,500 if I do it, because I got to charge you this fee that pays my team. And the first person said, okay. And he said about 3/4 of the people now, and he says, gosh, it's going to cost you $2,000, $2,500 for me to do it. But guess what? You know it. We're going to get it done in 30, 35 days like we do every time. And you just give me the stuff and you won't have to worry about it. Or, you know what, go over here. It's going to be cheaper. You don't have to pay them that fee. And he says 3/4 of people are actually using him. And so again, think about that. Maybe that's a good loan for you, because maybe the $500 would make a big difference in your world. Or maybe you've got a team that gets bonused on production and maybe it's good for them. In his case, the money actually goes to team members. It doesn't come to him. So he just thinks it's a good bonus for his team. So that's my tangent of the hour.
Yeah, well, not a lot of people can do home equity loans. Like I know my sister can't. She has to send them out. Like they can't do them at all where she is. So um,
A lot
it's
of the banks
also
are
good to
limiting them
network.
again. Yeah, a lot of them are
You-
limiting again, but most of them, if
Yeah.
you can do them, they pay you like $500. So they just don't pay you very
Mhm.
much money, if anything at all. But and you got to charge a fee, right? That's just what most companies do.
But this is also why you should network, and part of your database. I think it's okay to have other loan officers in there, because I know there's even some credit unions who can't do government loans. They may have a great jumbo or conventional product or do arms, and it's tough to compete with, but who are they giving those deals to when, they can't do it themselves? So don't forget to also include them in part of your pillars, which is another thing that Bill Hart talked about, is diversifying your business.
Yeah, I like that too. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, because we only got 2 minutes, but I'm looking at the wrong camera. Last thing I'm going to say, since we have 2 minutes, is that from my call with your sister, I always joke that my crystal ball is kind of foggy.
Mhm.
But I did ask the magic 8 ball that I got today if I was
Oh,
going to do,
looky
if people were going to
there.
be in, where people are going to enjoy my. I was tempted not to do this because it could have said something opposite, but was I going to be impactful at Mastermind? It said signs point to yes.
Okay, you gotta
So,
hold it up. Hold your 8 ball up.
so I think you all know what an 8 ball is, unless you're just a kid and you might not know it because they haven't been cool. But this is the classic 8 ball, and so you shake it up, and then it's got a window in this side, and
Yeah.
it's a blue. It's kind of hard to read. I had to put my glasses on, but then it gives you this little die that's got 8 sides to it. So any of you Dungeons and Dragons players would know what that's called, like an octahedron or something like that. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It's not an octagon. Maybe
Good
it is.
job with the octa.
Yeah. So I just knew octa. Thank you to the science teacher there. But then I put on my glasses to read, and it says, my reply is no. See, so good thing I didn't ask it something different that I wouldn't want to know to. But this would be a good use for hey, what's going to happen with interest rates? Oh, I don't know. But the answer is yes and no questions. But I did get that to mess around. So maybe we'll have to have a question of the day when we get on this call.
And just so you know, Todd, she's pushing her class back, so it'll be good so that y'all's aren't starting on the same day. I highly recommend, if you guys haven't checked out WBN operating system, I want to join. Can I sign up for $99 a month
You can
and have accountability?
I shouldn't say it on here, but I'll let you in for free just so you can check.
No, I'm going to pay because I need to. I'm also competitive, and I know myself, I do have a few traveling engagements. So you can watch the recordings, right? If you miss one of the Tuesdays.
It's all recorded. I will, go over my scripts to say no, so that you can actually it loads the whole thing into your calendar for 12 weeks. And then you kind of have it blocked out, but you maybe have a previous commitment at one of those times, or maybe the world's best opportunity falls in your lap and you've got to take that, which I would encourage you to do. And so then you can watch them in the recording. So they go up, the recordings are up by the next morning. I say normally they're up by the end of the day. It just depends on while it's rendering, whether I forget to hit save or not before I leave the office.
Got it. Thank you.
I try to make it sound like it takes 24 hours for it to do all its thing. It only takes a few hours. So it just kind of depends on, whether I remember to hit that next button or not. So most of the time it was up the evening of the class.
I'm laughing because I'm like picturing your picture from Be Real last night where you had fluffy hair and your glasses on. And if you guys aren't following Todd on Be Real, he's actually hip and one of the few that are already on the new social media platform. So I don't know why that.
I have 3 friends. I've got 2 of my 3 daughters and Deborah as my friends on Be Real. So
Hey, Bill Hart is on there, and
wow.
he's on there. He gets it every day.
All right. Well,
Y'all follow Bill Hart too.
It's all good. I will reach out and see if he'll friend me. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But we've hit our time. I'm so grateful whether you're watching this live or on video. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the like. It'll help us out. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're almost to 600 and something. So that is awesome. Thank you to all of you who are in there. And if you're at Mastermind, ping me, because I would love to put a face to the name. And if I look at you blankly and we've met before, I apologize in advance, but just remind me what the name is, and just know that grateful for all of you, grateful for you, Deborah, for being here as my co-pilot on Mondays. And we will be back next Monday, and we're going to talk about saying no, right, Deborah?
Yes, because I did a whole bunch of research prior to this call.
Dang, look at you.
So I'll
All
be
right.
ready.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you much. Have a terrific week. We'll hopefully see you in Vegas. If not, we'll see you here next Monday.
Bye.